Hey guys, what's going on? Today I'm going to be doing a PC build video with a budget of $650 with the goal being the best possible gaming PC. Now that's not to say you can't do any content creation or some streaming with this, that is completely possible, but I was pretty much primarily focused on gaming performance. And this PC is absolutely incredible for 1080p and surprisingly good at 1440p gaming as well. But before I get into the build, I want to let everyone know that all these prices are subject to change. I did my best to go for components that aren't on sale so you can get the most consistent price possible. However, there are a few components that will have promos or mail-in rebates incorporated into this build. You'll be able to see it all. I'm going to leave the PC part picker link in the description. So let's start the build off with the CPU, which will be the Ryzen 5 2600, which is probably the best bang for your buck CPU you can get right now. For under $150, you're getting a 6-core 12-thread processor clocked at 3.4 GHz that also comes with the Wraith cooler, which is more than capable of overclocking. I've seen this thing clock up over 4.1 GHz with this Wraith cooler. So that is perfect for someone on a budget. That means you don't actually have to go out and buy a separate cooler. You can actually save that for a later time. Next, we move on to the motherboard, and I decided to go with a nice, perfect mix of cheap and functional. I usually go for micro ATX boards or mini ITX boards because they are much cheaper. But I decided to go with a full ATX form factor because I really just wanted to leave the possibility of upgrading open for the future. The motherboard I decided on this build was the ASRock Fatality B450 Gaming K4. I chose this one specifically because it has pretty much all the features you're going to need. It supports up to 64 gigs of RAM. It has two M.2 slots. You can actually put an M.2 SSD and use it as a boot drive with this motherboard. Perfect chipset. It's really just the nice blend of budget and potential for upgrades in the future. For the RAM, I decided to go with a 16GB kit of Corsair Vengeance, two 8GB sticks. Nothing too fancy. I know Ryzen definitely prefers faster RAM, but at 3000 MHz, I think that's about good enough. This kit does have the two sticks, so you do still have two slots available on the motherboard. If you decide to go with the ASRock board that I have chosen, you have two slots open, so you have the possibility to upgrade to 32GB in the future if you feel that you need it. For storage, I didn't do anything too fancy. I just went with the basic WD Caviar Blue 1TB hard drive. You could easily fit an SSD into this build if you replace the hard drive. But for me personally, I still prefer to have a mass storage drive and then add an SSD later for a boot drive or faster loading times in games. But that is entirely a matter of preference. For the same price as a WD Caviar Blue, you can actually get a 500GB SSD. So if you feel like you won't need as much storage or that loading times are far more important to you, you could easily replace the hard drive with an SSD. For the GPU, I really wanted to go for something higher in performance, but after picking out all the other parts, I didn't really have a lot of money to work with, so I just ended up going with the GTX 1660. The model I decided to go with is the EVGA Superclocked Ultra Gaming model. There's really nothing fancy about this. The 1660 is a very good card. I'd say it still falls under the budget GPU category in terms of like modern games. It's not going to max out every game at the highest resolution. 1080p, it'll still do, perfectly fine. It'll max out most games that you play and get around 60 FPS. But for under $230, there's really not a whole lot of options that are just better than this. But if you have the money, I would try and go for something higher end. Even a 1660 Ti is worth the upgrade. For the case, I pretty much just went with the cheapest case I could find that would fit all the parts and had adequate airflow. The case ended up being the Antec P7 Black and Red Edition. Now, there isn't really anything fancy about this case. I mean, the black and red does go with the aesthetic of the motherboard, so you kind of got a little bit of a matching aesthetic there, but Really nothing too fancy. I just picked it because it does support a 360mm radiator if you ever do decide to water cool your build. If you don't and you just want to use that for more airflow, you can just throw 2 or 3 120mm fans in the front, and that way you'll have more than enough airflow. So that's just a nice budget case that'll pretty much fit all your needs. The final piece of this build will be the power supply, and again I had to go a little cheap on this just to keep it under budget, but I was able to get a Corsair CXM 550 watt 80 plus bronze semi-modular power supply. The reason I chose this is, yeah, 550 watts is a little low, it doesn't give you a lot of room for upgrades in the future, but it's more than capable of handling this build that I'm making right now. So that's just something you can always resell and then buy a better power supply in the future, or if you're willing to invest right now, you can go ahead and get something better. But I chose this one because it is semi-modular, which is always helpful when it comes to cable management, especially in cheap cases like the one I chose for this build, because there's not a whole lot of space in the back to cable manage, so having even it semi-modular is definitely a huge benefit. All in all, this build came out to about $645 at the time of this recording. As I said in the beginning of the video, prices are subject to change, and it could be completely different price by the time that I even upload this video. So this isn't exactly a set in stone amount, but a good general idea of what you could get if you were looking to spend about $650 on a gaming PC. But let me know what you guys think. If you have any suggestions on different builds you'd like to see, leave them in the comments below. And if you guys enjoyed this video, leave it a like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.